Are you sick and tired of your cities looking messy, disorganized, and in a grid-like fashion? Well, don't you worry, because you're in luck, because in this video I'm going to teach you 3 different styles of building your city in the game. These 3 methods are all doable from a population of 10 and are new player friendly. All these build styles can also be expanded to late game buildings too, and the point of this video is to teach these 3 methods to make city expansion feel more natural, like what you would see in the real world. However, as a word of caution, these 3 styles are not meant to optimize efficiency of certain buildings, or proximity, or degradation. So please keep that in mind. However, they still do work very well. Let's begin. Starting off with number 1, the Nomad City. The Nomad City can be described as a patchwork of randomly placed buildings where they seemingly make sense. I took inspiration from vernacular tribal architecture of North America, Southeast Asia, and Mongolia, where buildings are naturally spaced apart to allow for easier cross ventilation. I'd recommend playing as the Amevians if you want to test this design style out. This is one of the easiest styles to implement by new players. So, how does it work? Okay, so first what you want to do is choose an ocean or a lake map, preferably with a river. You can do this with just a river too, but you'll struggle gathering as much fish. I then place the throne somewhere near a forest and by the water, preferably in between the two, and immediately start placing longhouses randomly. Make sure you leave spaces for other buildings as well. Longhouses are the most efficient in terms of housing capacity. As you can see, I'm also leaving a linear gap. This will be where the road will be. I then add in the houses and apartments and draw in a 1 wide tile road to connect all of them. I do not try and make this all diagonal, I just respect the grid nature of the game. Once you're done with that, add in a 1 wide road heading towards the forest and build your first fishery and storage. Of course, build your fishery as large as possible. Make sure the storage and fishery are close together so you get that sweet proximity bonus. And make sure your fishery is as big as possible so you won't struggle with food supply. I then add in other rooms such as a janitor, hunter, and your first carpenter. And from that point on, you can pretty much continue as you are. Other tips is that you can branch roads from the main road that you've just made, and you can literally apply the same methods. It's either a chicken and the egg situation, so you can either place down houses first or a road first. It'll still look natural. Another thing I sometimes do is once my city is large enough, I then use the brush tool and paint in a wider road, just to show that this road is more important and it's had some time to develop. For services such as hearths or wells, I usually just attach it to the side of the road and put a fence around it. Same with markets and food stalls. One last point, but it's not essential. I try not to demolish the trees so it makes it look like it's still a tribe in the middle of the jungle or forest. The next method is what I like to call the medieval city. It doesn't really matter where you place your city, it just makes sure you're able to gather enough food early on. The first step is to draw out a main road adjacent to the throne room. What I usually do is to lead to important locations such as clay deposits or any other deposits you might use later on, in which you can build satellite cities around to transport back to the main hub. You may also notice the soil looks slightly different. That's because I'm playing on alpha version 69, which will soon be releasing. Essentially nothing grows on sand tiles, so this would be a good outline for the city in the future and its future expansion. Probably should have mentioned this first, but try to find a large patch of sand and only build your city on that. By only using sand tiles, your cities will look very natural, especially for cities in the Middle East where buildings are clustered along main roads and are generally more compact. This is also true of medieval cities, where you have this kind of patchwork. I try and make these roads as long as possible and can try and think of the most convenient route to the existing path. Of course, I then add a road perpendicular to this and start placing down pastures and farms near water to get the food supply started. I usually would avoid spreading into the forest too, because it's less effort to cut down less trees, and what you want to do is get your food started. Once you're done with that, I usually just cluster the houses along the main road, as well as a storage, janitor, and other buildings. Of course, you can keep adding long roads if you feel like it. This playstyle is specifically really good for races who care about roundness too. Just don't forget to check that your buildings are round by using the overlays tab. Now for places of gathering, I usually just cluster everything together and I add trees around it to make it look important, just like a park. For markets and food stalls, placing them in a straight line along a road also makes sense for passers-by to collect the food when they're traveling. The idea is to slowly expand your city by expanding farms, pastures and canals around it, like what would happen in real life. The goal is to eventually cover all the sand tiles of buildings with agriculture around it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Finally, the last city on the list is the Roman city. This one is the hardest to get right. Probably the best way to develop this is to start off with satellite villages around a large area where the main city will be built. But as you can see, I've not done that here. Instead, I've just started off with the large city and expanded farmlands around it. So to design this, what you want to do is start off with an 11 wide boulevard. From looking at ancient Roman cities, you can see that each city block is a series of square rooms all clustered into one rectangle with one or more courtyards. To build one of these, what I usually do is to place housing of different sizes in a perfect rectangle with a courtyard space for wells and hearths. You can then add passageways by creating doorways through the houses or by creating new rooms under the walls option. I then make sure that there's plenty of trees and benches on the inside too. This is a location to chill out in ancient Roman times, so it would make sense to have these. One thing the Romans also liked to do was to line up the walls with one another, so don't forget about that. You can also notice that Roman cities had large squares or forums. I usually put my markets, food stalls, import, export, haulers and army supply depots there, as well as temples. If you're broke like me, you can also outline the forum with 1x1 walls if you can't afford pillars or just don't have the technology to do so. For other buildings, it's the same case for housing blocks. One thing I also want to point out is that I had made the courtyards way too big. Instead, they would have looked much smaller and square in size, just like many Roman urban buildings. This was a mistake on my part. For satellite settlements, I usually grid my farms or pastures too. I try and make my buildings follow a floor plan of Roman villas with larger courtyards than what you would see in the city. I also add in small village squares with columns too. It is useful for exporting raw materials such as gems or silicon, but try not to make it look more important than the main city. Just remember, all the manufacturing and administration buildings will be in the main city, so don't forget to link those up with haulers or transports. Finally, you can add in more than one boulevard to your city if it's large enough. Just make sure that your 1x1 grid roads all line up, unlike what I've shown here. I was just being lazy, I just wanted to create an example city, but yeah, it took me about 2 hours to get to this point. So yeah, those are 3 methods of city design in Songs of Syx. Let me know what you thought down in the comments, and I'll see you next time. See ya!